you guys feel way too much like friends than you do a podcast thing. And so I had a hard time at times staying focused on, well, let's just talk.
Yeah.
Okay, we like that. We like living.
We love that.
And so that's the worst part. The best part is you'll feel more like friends than it did. We just got to talk.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a balancing thing for me.
Your message equals your $1 million anthem. You don't have a sales problem. You have a message problem. If your words don't captivate, they don't convert. I have helped Grammy-winning artists craft unforgettable songs. And now we help entrepreneurs just like you craft your business messaging that actually sells.
You don't need more hustle. You need the right strategy. I help scale multi-million-dollar companies, and we can show you exactly how to systemize, scale, and dominate the market without drowning in the grind. Welcome to the Conquer Club podcast. Entrepreneurs, creatives, and worshipers, what if your next big breakthrough isn't in a boardroom, but in a moment of worship? Well, today we're unlocking the divine blueprint for creativity and purpose.
Ray's journey as a storyteller, a poet, and a worship leader has inspired countless people, including my own. I know somebody listening today will be transformed just by the powerful words that our friend, Mr. Ray Hughes, welcome to the Conquer Club podcast.
Oh, thank you. I hope you have a lot of canned applause, people roaring, throwing things up in the air.
Yeah, we have fake confetti and angels singing and harps playing.
Ray, I couldn't hear you. There was so much applause and whistling and screaming for you.
Yeah. They'll be taking a lap in a minute.
We're so glad to have you, Ray.
Hey, it's wonderful to be here. I like you guys.
We love you.
Well, the funny thing is we love you too. That's just fantastic. Grateful to have you here on the Conquer Club podcast. And I'm going to jump right in. I know our listeners are going to love this episode and love hearing you and your wisdom. But so, Ray, the first question I want to have our listeners listen in on is in the world where the hustle and the grind is unfortunately glorified, how can entrepreneurs reconnect with the divine source of inspiration to fuel their creativity and their purpose?
Well, I think, first of all, entrepreneurs, in some circles, they would not be considered to be highly creative people. They're more functionary to some people. I don't see that at all. I see that they have to be highly creative, but just in a different way than the poet or the seer would be. Entrepreneurs to me are those who have the ability to access options. And that to me is one of the purest definitions of creativity, is to access options. But to live their life driven by the insistence to access options can be wearying to anybody.
Yeah.
And so I think, as all of us do, we have to have those places where we can escape from not only the conflict, but from the obligation of being creative and on and getting the job done. And because we wind up in a state of drivenness that we don't feel like we can get out of. And entrepreneurs are that way. There's always obligation. There's always commitment. There's always deadlines. And pretty soon, man, that striving turns into anything but thriving in your own life and in your own heart. And you have to have an escape. And I don't think it's necessarily one of those where you work yourself to the bone all year long and then go away for 2 weeks on a beach somewhere, because then you overdose on peace and you go back into the storm. And that's not life-giving either. So I think we have to have that a daily rhythm Okay, sometimes deadlines and all that force us into sense of obligation, and we feel like we're completely out of sync and out of rhythm. We're just striving and fighting. But there are ways that you can access peace in the middle of the storm. You know, I think one of the reasons Jesus was able to do all that he could is because he was not moved or driven by the neediness or obligation of man. He only said what he would hear the Father say, do what he would see the Father do, and he had to keep that connectedness. Otherwise, he would be trying to figure out how to fix Matthew's issue and Judas's problem, and all of the, and plus all the needs of humanity that he was exposed to. With a heart like Jesus, can you imagine walking around in that depth of need and not just continually being drained? But he didn't even take the conflict of the culture to heart. He was engaging with the Father.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Well, that is excellent information. I love not to just wait on your 2 or 3 weeks of vacation to unplug, but to set up a daily routine or maybe a weekly routine. I know a lot of us look forward to the, I'll say the Saturday where it's not up at the crack of dawn and getting going. You got a little bit more of a pace to you. And then of course our day of Sabbath rest on Sunday, we're supposed to take full advantage of. But that is excellent information and advice for all of us, is to do it on a weekly and daily basis versus just that 2 or 3 weeks out of the whole year.
Yeah. And, if worship is a lifestyle, the overflow of our worship is what enables us to be effective in this world anyway. And I think that's why when Jesus met the conflict of temptation, and if you look at the word temptation actually means he was tempted. It was real. Yeah. So that means he had to consider his option there. But when the devil brought, well, if you'll do this, 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 and this, look at the temptation in this. He says, you don't have to go to a cross, to a tomb, and to a grave and resurrection. And you don't have to do all that suffering. Look, I know what you're here for. I know who you are. All I need you to do, I'll give you what you came for. I know you've come to redeem the glory that was taken from Adam in the garden. And so I'll just give it to you. Just one little thing. All you got to do is worship me. Yeah. And that, can you imagine the angels were holding their breath, waiting to see the answer that comes out of him? Because if he has the wrong answer, the Father is dethroned eternally, and Lucifer now takes that place. This is a huge moment. And what did Jesus do? He established priority for every human being when he said, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. That tells us worship first, service second. So now the overflow of our worship then empowers us to serve God, serve humanity, serve the kingdom, serve society, serve culture, serve our families. That little priority thing right there takes all the striving out of it, especially like for people like worship leaders too. What's your greatest tool in your arsenal for leading worship? The overflow of your worship. Yeah. Put enough water in the room for them to walk on it.
That's so good.
You're not doing their job, but the overflow of your worship invites them to that. And I think, if entrepreneurs need to take a different approach to that because maybe they're not musical, there's a lot of things, carry a contemplative heart, carry an awareness of the presence of God. Yeah. Just always be quick to pray in every situation. A lot of it's far more simple than we want it to be. We want to have a formula when he's not a formula, he's a father.
Oh, that's good. That's a tweetable, repeatable, even though tweet's not a tweet anymore.
You made me dizzy there.
Well, it's so true. And it's also everything you said, Ray, is the temptation to get caught up in that and the drivenness. And listen, guilty is charged, and I have to recharge and stay plugged into him, so that the overflow is who you know, not what you know. That's what I have come to realize. It's an overflow of who I know more than what I know. And when it's the who first, everything else rolls and flows as it should. Even I know Kevin and I've talked about this, Ray, for I call them entrepreneurs. If you put the pray right in the middle of entrepreneurs, you got a good thing going. So as
You are a committed word flipper. If I've ever known one in my life, Kevin, every word has a flip to it.
I'm telling you, but God does that. I'll see words.
It's awesome.
He re-scrambles them and he'll highlight them. So, but the word entrepreneur, I'm like, if you put that in the center of everything, but we've even talked, and I know this may sound silly to some listeners, but before we send an email, sometimes a lot of times I'll just pray over the email.
Yes.
Pray that I know Kevin does that in sales as well. It's when you invite him just to be hanging out with you as your business partner. Yeah. What beautiful things can come from that, because the temptation is there all the time. And you, Ray, you've dedicated, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you're not, I know you are so young, but you've dedicated over 50 years helping others discover their own creative gifts. What ignited the passion inside of you, and how do you think business leaders can also tap into that passion, even if it's not their business?
Yeah, well, my young life, when I left home, I was left out of a drivenness to find out who I was and what I was born to be. I didn't have the language for it, of course, because I still was really a kid, but because I was very gifted and talented in many ways. When I got saved at 16 years old, I was flung immediately into the ministry because it was during the Jesus movement. And so sharing my testimony immediately began to be effective in amazing ways. And I look back at it now, I'm thinking, I was 16 years old. I left home in a 1955 Dodge Royal with a Red Ram V8 Hemi in it. But when I left home, that first week that I got saved, someone from Nashville, because of this revival thing that was happening in my school, I got this call from Nashville, and it says, "Hello, this is so and so. I'm from the Vanderbilt School of Divinity, and I've heard what's happening in your school. Would you come to a Jesus rally or a revival tomorrow night? If I picked you up, would you go with me and share your testimony?" And I didn't know what that was. I really didn't. I thought a testimony was something on Perry Mason, because I didn't have Christian language. Yeah. And I remember the first time I heard about a deliverance ministry, I thought that was a Christian baby doctor or something. It was bizarre. And then, but anyway, they said, "Would you go and share your testimony?" I said, "Oh, yeah." And then the long story short is they didn't have interstates back then. I'm 2.5 hours from where we were going. And about halfway into this trip riding with this guy, that's when I realized this is my first time to go to church and I am the speaker. But when I got there that night, he had explained to me what a testimony was. I said, "Oh, you want me to just tell them what Jesus done to me?" Remember, our tenses are a little sideways in Kentucky when you're young. "You want me to tell them what Jesus done to me, huh?" I got that figured out. And we also have trouble with math in Kentucky.
Tell us your math.
3 kinds of fellers from Kentucky: the ones that can count and the ones that can't. All right. Yeah. And no, sure enough, they say 4 out of 3 people from Kentucky have problems with math, and I'm both of them. So, and so, truth be told, I'm not even sure how old I am.
Oh, Ray, that is a classic.
No, I'm 69. I would be 70, but I failed the 8th grade. That helped me.
Okay.
Helped me back 1 year. Okay.
Oh goodness, I love it. I
But
like
now
it.
I'm sneaking up on it now. But anyway, what happened was I got there and I walked into this church, and it's a little old Methodist church in Nebo, Kentucky, of all places, out in the middle of nowhere. And it was a youth revival. And I walked in, and there was people everywhere, young people sitting in the windows, sitting up on the platform behind the podium, the vestibule, the foyer. More words I'd never heard in my life. And the foyer was full even. And this guy gets up with a 12 string and sings something about a kumbaya and only takes a spark to get the woods on fire or something. And he sings these couple songs with 12 string and bell bottoms. And then he introduces me, going to come up and share my testimony. So I did. I just told him what Jesus done to me. And when I did that, at the end of that, there was about 80 kids responded and 80 people gave their heart to Jesus.
Wow.
And this was a completely foreign existence for me. I come from 7 generations of redneck non-achievers, basically. Mm-hmm. And we lived we lived in a holler on Garrett's Creek, was home. And it's a 2-room house, 13 of us in a 2-room house with a lean-to kitchen built on the back of it and a spring 50 yards away. An outhouse the other way. But my dad was a well digger, so that means we moved every time the rent came due, And then we would go back to my granny and grandpa's house. And there in the isolation of that holler, we lived our lives. And now Jesus had done something in my life, and I'm standing in a church telling people what he had done. And so when I went back to school, because they told me Jesus is coming soon. And so if Jesus is coming soon, especially if he's coming Thursday, I don't need to do this algebra.
That's right.
And immediately the doors opened for me to start traveling every week, and with a guitar and sharing my testimony, and that was almost 55 years ago, and I've been going ever since.
Wow.
And that is, just hearing what ignited you all the way back to when you were 16 years young, and now fast forward, we get into what the impact that you've made on this side of heaven. And we know your teachings have emphasized the importance of worship and creativity. You made that very clear in all your messages. But how do you see these elements intertwining in one's spiritual journey, especially for those leading businesses in today's business world?
Well, I'll tell you how my life changed. The journey took a huge shift when here I was doing concerts, playing in prisons and schools and all this stuff. Huge shift happened in me. And when I'd been walking with the Lord for about 12 years. And I quit singing songs about Jesus. And I started singing songs to him. And my life changed. My world changed. Now the focus was different. And now the language became very different in me. The way I interacted with God was very different. And that's when I began to realize that all of these little nuances of personality and a bent for creativity all of my life was waiting for such a time to engage with him in the creative process. And that to me, many times is what entrepreneurs are really missing, is that understanding that what they do is they are created by the Creator to be creative. And we're created for worship. So if you're created by the Creator to be creative, and if we're created for worship and we're not a worshiper of God, we forfeit the reason we exist, right?
Yeah.
So if we can marry the two, then there's a grace for and an empowerment to do what we do in this world, in our businesses, in our lives, as expressions of worship. Because creativity is not about our genius. creativity is about our generosity.
Mm.
Mm.
That's so good.
That's why for God so loved the world, what he created, for God so loved the world. World is the word cosmos, by the order by which all things were created to function and exist. And what did he do? He gave. And so if we can understand that it's not about our genius, it's about our generosity. And the more generous we are, the more he will awaken his nature in us, which is that creative nature.
We were just reading that in Proverbs this morning,
Yeah.
right before. And keep going.
Hey, let me read this to you.
Yeah.
Think of worship, and now think of an entrepreneur, and the relationship between the two.
Okay.
First of all, worship is not about meeting the needs of some great big insecure, egotistical God with identity issues, right? He's a father who seeks us to worship him, because in moments of spirit and truth worship, he receives our undivided attention and purest expressions of our love, while he gives us his undivided attention and purest expressions of his love. So those are the moments when both parties, he and us, experience love as a gift and not a reward. That's when seekers become finders in moments of worship. He was seeking us, we were seeking him, and then love finds love. And that, something really beautiful happens in our lives when you worship in spite of your weariness and praise louder than your pain. And it also affects those around you. And that way we are empowered to serve and to bless and be generous and give and so on. So that's a bit of my theology for worship is try to live a life where it's not just about 20 minutes before the offering on Sunday morning. It's actually a lifestyle. Yeah.
The praising past your pain, that is profound. It's what we should do. And Kevin and I always say that it really sales is serving. You're serving them something that they've always wanted to begin with. Maybe you have to convince them or not. You don't. People, let me rephrase that. People think that you have to convince somebody, but the truth is you just have to serve them. And when you serve them, then it's like you said, it's a reciprocal sort of thing. It's a reciprocal. So switching gears. So Ray and I and a whole group of songwriters at the time went on a trip. We've gone on a couple together, Ray. We've gone to Scotland. We've gone to Ireland. You have led them so incredibly well, as you can tell, just by the wisdom this man portrays, or overflows, I should say, portrays. He overflows this wisdom. And Ray, that's why we wanted business people to hear you and your wisdom, which is really from the Father. And when we were in Scotland and Ireland, many of us experienced spiritual awakenings, and those lands resonated so deeply inside of us. And what do you think? I'm going back to business leaders because that's who our listeners are. But what do you think that when you go into certain lands, or maybe a business owner going into a certain business, there's something that's just firing inside of him or her? What do you think that connection is from the land? And
Well, I think there are graces for places. And I think when you walk into a land that you are carrying something, what's that old adage that says, anytime God marks a land, he will mark a man for that land. And you can see that historically, but also you can, if there's graces for places, and there are some places that just make you come fully alive. There are some people, when you walk into you immediately know, you know what? We'll probably be friends for the rest of our life. At least I hope so, because there's in the world, we used to say in the new age kind of, I get You ever walk into a place and you just get a bad vibe,
Yeah.
Well, that's literally what you're getting. There are frequencies alert and in motion in that place that your spirit just said, man, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
But there are some places you walk in, you say, wait a minute, I do belong here. And it's based upon the longing that you carry.
Mm.
And longing is connected to belonging. And when you walk in, when entrepreneurs, businessmen, you begin to interact with people that wait a minute, we carry something in common. And it may have to do with the land or the nation or the call on that place, the destiny on that land, and the destiny that's connected to your life, which is DNA based, of course. But in Scripture, you'll see graces for places where it's like this. God says, Samuel, go down to Gilgal. I want to speak to you. Well, Samuel thinks, well, God, you're already speaking and I'm already listening. Why in the world you want me to wear out a mule and go all the way to Gilgal down there somewhere in the middle of the desert? Just I'm listening.
Why do I gotta go there?
Well, yeah, why such a hard trip? But that's when obedience comes into the equation. And there is many times purposes of our journeys will walk us into relationships or into businesses or into a culture, or let's say it like this. You'll walk toward an account or somehow a purpose that you're carrying a common, you can't always figure it out, but you just know something's right about it.
Yeah.
So I think we got to pay closer attention to our spirit, man, pay closer attention to that gut reaction. Entrepreneurs, again, very highly sensitive people. They just carry their sensories in a different place in their life. They may not be the ones that's looking for flowers and poetry and powerful terminology and words and all that, but they are connected to a language. They're connected to thought. They're dreamers, and they know better than everybody that dreams don't have to come true to be valuable. Because
can we just hold that and repeat it, please?
Yes, say that again.
Well, let me get you something. Here's something that I live my life by this. And one of the most liberating things that a creative person will ever learn is the difference between a thought, an idea, and a dream. But now, and as I said, dreams don't have to come true to be valuable. They may just be something that God brings into that dream that motivates and inspires and draws you forward. And then get down there and find out, wait a minute, that dream didn't come true, but look where I am now. And then a light comes to a whole new day that you would not have, and you would not have been there had you not walked out that dream as far as it was supposed to go. And I know, the Bible says, go after your dreams. Well, excuse me, wait a minute. Dolly Parton said that, but that's kind of like the Bible, and you're in Nashville, So.
I mean, a little bit of 9 to 5 up in here.
but listen, if we could learn the difference between a thought, an idea, and a dream, it'll save you a lot of wear and tear on your heart. A thought can come and go in a moment and never be remembered. An idea comes and stays long enough to create that inner conversation. And a dream turns the conversation into an inner dialect that actually shapes your destiny. And here's how it works. I looked at a tree standing in front of my house, and I said, that is a beautiful old tree. Well, there's the thought. Well, I might take one of those fallen limbs and make a knife handle out of it. There's an idea. Or, I'm going to build a company that makes the most beautiful knives that have ever been made. And those knives will be keepsakes and family heirlooms that will be passed from fathers to sons for generations. But there's a dream. And that is a worthy dream. I think anytime you're passing anything from generation to another generation, because, when's the very best time to impact the heart of a child? 100 years before they're born. So if we can put Holy Spirit dreams and purposes in motion, Songwriters, you're not writing, when you write a song, you're not writing next year's most popular chorus or something. You're writing the next generation's language for accessing God. So we got to be quit thinking 5-year plan and start thinking eternal purpose before we're going to be a demonstration of the kingdom. And Tanya, I am so sorry. I have no idea what the question was.
It's okay. No, I don't either, but it was all good. It was all good. I think you just went a little bit deeper onto we were talking about the land and how it resonates, and different people and different atmospheres. You resonate. And I'll tell you, I think Warren Buffett says he'll never partner with somebody unless they have, quote unquote, failed 2 businesses. Because they learn from that. But like you said, it kind of coordinates with what you said about a dream that doesn't come true. Say that again, because I want to.
A dream doesn't have to come true to be valuable.
There you go.
So all of those dreams that God places in our hearts, we go for it, and it may not come true in the way that you pictured it, but it's coming true to the next thing that is meant for you and for the people around you.
Yeah.
So
and sometimes that's where the creativity kicks in. You start the business, it fails, but pivot.
Yes.
And now we're carrying everything that the Lord enabled us to pick up on the way. And we ought to have the wisdom to know what to drop as well.
Yes.
Because we did. Oh, yeah. We picked up some things in that season that are not going to contribute to our future.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's good.
We'll go a little bit further into that same category of questioning in regards to the frequency here, Ray. So we know you've often spoke about the sound of heaven. And my question is, how can individuals attune themselves to this divine frequency in their daily lives, especially with their professional endeavors? What would you have to share with him regarding being able to attune themselves into that divine frequency?
Well, sometimes it's just a matter of giving prioritizing and giving the Lord an opportunity to just meet with you. And for me, there's numerous ways that happens. For example, like when I go to other places, sometimes I'll go to, I hate to say something because you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'll go somewhere just because the weather report says it's going to rain. If it's going to rain, oh, awesome. And like in Ireland, it rains at some point just about every day there in Scotland and in Wales. But I love to go on walks in the rain, because to me, rain untangles my life. I feel fresh and alive. Now there's an old saying in Ireland, under every stone is a poet. And also there are things that you see in Ireland, like was pointed out to me one day, said, see that old cottage right over there? The fire has not gone out on the family hearth for 7 generations. That means your great, 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 great grandfather built the fire that you're warming your feet to. And they live in a culture where language has found a place of beauty in their lives, even to the point that just about everybody here embraces poetry. Yeah. In other words, their life is based upon marrying truth and beauty and awakening wonder. So you're going to keep wonder alive in your life. A lot of times businessmen don't have permission to keep wonder alive because of the task that they have to fulfill. And if they can find ways, like for example, our second president, Adams, he said a man is never alone if he has a poet in his pocket. And back in those days, they didn't they couldn't access everything in the world like on a cell phone.
Right.
But they carried something that was always awakening wonder in them. Like right here's a little book. I don't know if you can see it. See how thin that is? My finger is wider than that book. Yeah. But that is Browning's poetry. very legible. And so in their pocket, they would carry something that would remind them of the beauty that's in this world and remind them of also of ways of beautifying truth in their life. Here's something, Kevin, that I would say to every businessman: find something that's going to give you the languages that best expresses your worship unto the Lord. And there's not many things better than the Word of God itself. This is a Psalter. This one is from 1835. I have one from 1670 over there, but I don't like to handle it a lot. But there's a metrical Psalms, for example.
Wow.
And it's set in everything was in couplets in David's day. They did that on purpose. The Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me down to lie. In pastures green, he leadeth me the quiet waters by. Now, these started becoming a part of our Christian experience many, of course, many years after Jesus coming and changing the language of that Old Testament language. And so these hymn writers and poets, what they would do is they would write their poetry and including Jesus and our Lord and our Savior and our Master and so on. So that it was time for a new language to be joined. And one of the things that they did is they took Old Testament Psalms and turned them into something that was memorable and something that was quotable and singable. And it was broken up into couplets so that it would become a part of their language. And they would learn it, say it, speak it, quote it, and so on. Fill their heart and mind full of the Word of God. So that tells us garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
Oh.
Strain and stress and striving in, that's exactly what comes out of our lives. So find ways of meeting with Him. As I think it was Charles Spurgeon, one of the great poet preachers, though he wasn't necessarily called that. He was called the Prince of Preachers. And one of the reasons is because he would find the little couplets like that would nourish his spirit, and that would become his message to his generation. He'd say things like, well, I have learned to kiss the waves that have slammed me into the rock of ages. He could have just said, I've been through some stuff, but no, I've learned to kiss the waves. Look at all the beauty and metaphor and all the poetry involved in that. Wow. And I don't want to encourage everybody to get off on some sort of extreme, but I think there's something missing in our life when we don't have beauty in our life. It's many times it's because we don't celebrate it enough to welcome it into our life.
Oh, so good. What do you say, Ray? I want to make sure, because I'm going to mess this up. So you correct me, but you say, pause long enough to let the rain find you, or something like that.
Yeah. Walk slow so the rain can find you.
There you go.
Walk slow.
Walk slow so the rain can find you. And I think we get so caught up in, like you said early, the deadlines. I mean, if the first part of that word doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will. Yeah. But you have all these deadlines, and
that's what they are. They're deadlines.
Yes. And they make you dead. So to come alive and to reawaken something within you, everything you said is so beautiful, and you're exactly right. And I think especially as a lot of time men are providers, not always, but if you are an entrepreneur man who's a provider, and that stress that comes with that, you quit dreaming and you just start doing the tasks and get caught up in the earth curse system of striving and the sweat and the toil. And what comes, there's no beauty in that. Like you said, from your family. I mean, women and men, we create the temperature of our homes. So when your kids come in, if dad's mad or mom's mad because of a stressful day, then everybody, where there's a waterfall, everybody gets splashed. That's and good, so Tom. Do you think, I want to ask you this, what challenges have you, Ray Hughes, gone through that or conquered that awakened something in you, and how have you navigated those to maybe there can be some lessons for entrepreneurs to draw from your experiences.
Yeah, well, I would hope so, but I don't know if they actually could or not, because my skill set is anything but business. And I'm not a businessman, not a business person. I've done some things in the business world that were highly effective, but I don't know if I've ever done anything that was successful. I mean, I'm getting really real with you here. What you're going to measure success by, however the world measures success. Most of the things that I have endeavored to do has been born out of two things: obedience and naivety, sometimes just plain old stupidity, and just believing the very best and going with it with all my heart. And then when it fails, the Lord has to put my life back together. So I've had a lot of failures and disappointments, but also it's and for us, sometimes in those seasons it would take all of the fire out of me, and I'd have to go to the dark night of the soul and figure out a way to rise up again, and somehow by the grace of God I would. And so I've sort of adopted that, that my life is about walking in obedience and awakening the hiddenness in other people. And that makes me feel more successful than anything I do, is to see what happens in somebody's life when they capture the language that God has enabled me to speak to their heart. And it means so much to them that they're inspired beyond loss and inspired beyond their pain and inspired. And I'm not trying to sound overly noble there. That's just kind of the way it's always worked. I've done some amazing things, though. I mean, I had an encounter with the Lord back in the 80s, and the Lord really spoke to me to do this thing. It was I raise up a 4,000 piece orchestra to have a worship gathering in the Vanderbilt Stadium in Nashville, and Music City, almost like inviting and welcoming people into a worship experience in the heart of Music City.
Wow.
And did on August 12, 1988. 38 states and 8 nations came together after I lived on an airplane for 2 years, just going around promoting and letting everybody know it's going to happen. Because I think there's a higher call upon Nashville than what was happening at the time. Yeah. And all I knew is there was a higher call that had happened in my heart in regards to worship. And most of all my friends, I was a songwriter in Nashville in the 70s, up on Music Row. But most all of my friends in the music world back then, they, the only I found out there were over 800 verses in the Word of God that relates to music. Wow. And about the only ones we knew was "Make a Joyful Noise," which justified bad singing. And so when I found all that was going on in the Word of God in regards to music and worship and praise and creativity, I wanted to stir that, and I did. And it was an incredible thing that happened, but there were musicians and worship leaders. We had a processional in the middle of Vanderbilt Stadium with those, there was some drama and pageantry connected to it. Jesus comes riding through as king on a white horse, right through all the processionals and the banners and the trumpets and all, So there, and we had an amazing choir and anyway, conductor and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was a powerful, powerful time. But when it was all over, and Denise and I were just young pups, and we stand and look at each other, now we're $300,000 in debt. I don't even know how to spell 300,000. Do you know how many that is? I want to go back and get somebody in Kentucky help me count that.
I was going to say, you can go back home and have them count. Say, no, that's not 3, that's a 1.
And what I would say to that, Ray, is that's really like our heart wanted you to be on here, because I know you don't see the entrepreneurial things, but I see them. It's like turning your gifts and your talents into things that
people can learn and grow and all of that. I know you don't see that, but you do unlock things in people, their OG plan, the original.
Yeah.
You help resonate that in not just music, and not in
Yeah.
just worshipers,
Yeah.
because I think somebody that feels called to start a business, that is their worship, not in a way of I worship it over something else, but in a way that has awakened, like you said earlier. So I know our listeners, there's so many incredible poetic words and statements that you say that will awaken something inside of our listeners. And I know it. Entrepreneur.
I think where it comes unglued, comes unhitched in my life is when I'm not a manager.
Yeah.
I can't manage things because I am given to the sensitivities and sensibilities. I'll call off the whole day because there's a need, or I'll call off the whole. What there? Listen to that bird song.
Yeah.
Who needs to hear a bird song? We got a job to do. And I
I can relate on many levels.
But that's also part of the beauty of the gift that God put in my life. When I go to Ireland or Scotland or Wales, there's so much that awakens in me. What I want to do, I want to load bus loads of people and take them over there and let them stand on that cliff or stand on that mountain or meet that old Shawnee in a pub somewhere that I've met. And so my passion for life is what, pretty much drives me. And I'm more inspire driven than I'm more, impact and influence, means more to me a lot of times than some sort of windfall of success.
Well, you do it well. You do it well. And I think that overflows to everybody who meets you. Truly.
That's right. You do it very well. I know not everybody has the gift or the talent in regards to what you have, but some of us that are maybe feeling a little disconnected with our creativity, what are some steps, Ray, that we can take to rekindle that divine spark and hopefully integrate it into our business practices as well? What are some of the things that you would encourage us to practice to get a little bit more in tune with those gifts that you have?
Yeah, daily finding a point or a focus of meditation or find that ability to welcome a contemplative experience into your life. If it's going for a walk, if it's going, find something that you can focus on. And a lot of times we say, well, I don't really know how to meditate. Well, if you know how to worry, you do.
That's right.
Oh my God.
So
pretty darn good at it.
Yeah. We don't have to wrap it around some shaman, guru-ish kind of thing. Man, so find those things that make you come alive and honor them in your life. Welcome and give them a place in your life that they know they can belong in your life, and you'll start living your life from that place. And for example, to your question, is writing. Oh well, and I'm not talking about roses, red, violets, or blue kind of stuff. I'm talking about give yourself an opportunity to find that writer in you. Because there is something really important about words and language that welcomes creativity and life. You see, nobody really writes the rules for creativity. They were written by the creator of the universe, but he did engrave them on the desires of man's heart. And so creativity and innovation should not be bound and limited by rules and precepts and concepts. If rules had their say, all writing would be contained in books. But you may not be an author. I've wrote a few books, but I'm a writer. I'm an author and not a finisher. I live my lifestyle around writing rather than producing a product of my thoughts and ideas or whatever. But writing is not about, to me, is not about creating clever, clichéical kind of things that will outlive me, because writing is not about outliving your life. I've already done that 3 times. I was supposed to be dead 3 times. I'm in a battle of cancer right now, and they told me 5 years ago that I'd had 18 months at the most. And so I understand, and twice during this process, I outlived my life. And but it's not about, and it's not about leaving a legacy of clever thoughts and revelations, but businessmen, fathers, sons, and not just businessmen, business women. It's about leaving something that someone might need one of these days. So, right. It's also about the process of your life coming alive. You're going to leave something that's full of life. So, what is writing really? Writing is about helping. Well, writing. For example, with me, I speak the way I think, so I'm going to write the way I speak. And if writing is my new voice, and I had to deal with that when all of a sudden COVID and cancer came at the same time, the same month. And I said, if writing is my new voice, I'm not going to travel and be speaking on platforms all over the world. I'm going to speak by writing. I will speak in my native tongue, and I will awaken the tongues of many. So if story is my song, I'll just write it louder. And I'm going to be ruthless to the page and show it no mercy until all I have left is kindness. Every entrepreneur needs a poetic creed in his life that says, this is why I do the things I do, and I am willing to engrave it into my tomorrow. Tanya, you remember when we were on High Street in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and we go into that little place where there's the Writers' Museum, and it's honoring Sir Walter Scott. Yay. And it's also honoring Rabbie Burns, and it's honoring what's his name, Stevenson. It's honoring all these writers. Remember, I asked everybody, look, and they had engraved in the stones all these sayings and these basically poetic creeds. And I encourage every person to have those. I say, I will be ruthless to the page. I will show it no mercy until all I have left is kindness. If you can put things like that in your life, and by the way, then I will write the kindness, and I'll pray that will help. And when I die, I hope I have a pen in my hand and not a book.
Ooh. Wow.
Songs, poetry, art, literature, all. These are wonderful ways to process life. And to me, it's a sad thing that businessmen don't feel the freedom like they did at one time in our culture. As a matter of fact, every attorney, every business that was worth its salt, they even had calligraphers on staff to communicate words in beautiful ways.
Gosh,
Contracts were written in beautiful ways. Did I tell you all about a guy named Rogers Platt Spencer? Did I ever tell you about him? No. Okay, this will be a quick one, and it's really the answer to what I'm still on track here. There's a young 13, 14-year-old boy. He's walking down the road one day, and while he's walking and just enjoying the beauty of creation, he looks over there and he realizes that the wind is causing the wheat to bend at a 52-degree angle. Look at that. And he was just kind of trapped by that for a moment. And then he looked out and he saw, and the ocean waves coming in are at a 52-degree angle. And he had a thought. He said, wow, if God communicates beauty of his creation at a 52-degree angle, I'm going to do the same thing. And he took up the pen and he began to write everything that he would write to communicate the beauty of his life, and the beauty of who God was to him was written at a 52-degree angle. Wow. And that's and his name was Spencer, And that's why until this day we have Spencerian script. It was
Wow.
because of this young man was alert and alive and aware to the beauty around him, and he created from that place. Now,
Mm.
if we are driven by something else as opposed to also, I mean, hey, I'm a get it done guy. I'm a get it out of the way guy. But also, what I think what's missing is that
Mm.
beauty side
Yeah.
that Jesus portrayed over and over and over and over and over and over.
Mm.
But songs, poetry, art, literature, business guys fall in love with art, fall in love with literature, fall in love. There are wonderful ways to process life, just like this young man. And, the very first, the Spencerian script that came out and changed the way and created that calligraphy that we know today
Mm-hmm.
is that Spencerian script, like the early Coca-Cola signs. Remember all that beautiful
Yeah.
Yeah.
and also another one was the Ford, those old A model Fords. The way they did Ford was beautiful.
Mm.
Well, that
Wow.
Wow. Well,
Well,
Ton, I know you have another question as we begin to come in final approach here. But Ray,
yeah.
you said something that jumped off the page here that I want to go back to. You had started off with having some fun with Kentucky math, but I heard you say that because of your Kentucky math, you're still here. 5 years ago, they told you you had 18 months to live, and you just couldn't figure out the math. So you're still here.
It's that Kentucky math coming back.
That's why you're still here, Ray.
that's right. Well, go figure.
What do you know, man?
Or,
Well,
I just tell them, hey, I'm not going to leave this world according to the enemy of my life is not going to determine when I leave this world. I'm going to leave when I leave this world. It's not going to be according to His word. I just tell people, listen, they're going to have to shoot me on Judgment Day.
Okay, it's my time.
Yeah, when I.
well, that is we're so glad you're here. I mean, everybody wouldn't be able to have this wisdom imparted in you, and I know I love that. To land or to have the pen instead. I've journaled since I was probably 17 or 18. I have journals from back in the day. It would just be part of my processing every evening, and now I do it every morning.
Which is also creates a big question. Why does journaling and those kind of things always wind up being a womanish thing?
That is so true.
No.
That is so true. Because
you look at the folks who shaped culture and shaped our world, and you look back, it was not a gender driven thing. It's a way of processing life.
It's such a good point. Imagine, I always say, why are the boardrooms in businesses? They're boring. They're board rooms, literally. So imagine if the creativity that could flow in there before a meeting. All right, let's take 10 minutes and just write your thoughts, write your ideas. Imagine what could awaken from just the time, or just listen to what you need to put on paper. Would be, I can't imagine what could come from that.
Yeah. And you know what, businesses, I think, need to make it a point to give people permission to do that.
Yeah, that's
because,
what it is.
Competition and the two things that rob creativity the most is competition and comparison. And so when you set people in a boardroom situation, and when competition and comparison move in, they're afraid to be creative.
Yes.
And it shuts that down. So we need to create environments or cultures that welcome it. I've noticed another thing with business folks is once you get on your title of your job description, creative director, you cease to become creative. What in the world?
That's what it is. It's in the world.
It should be boundless, limitless permission, but instead, I better, I got, again, we create limitations and boundaries around it. It's a little bit like, and maybe this is, maybe we're we're already over, but let me say this one real quick. This is the perfect example. In the late 1800s, there was an old preacher up in Ohio. His name is Milton Wright. And Milton Wright was one of these old, one of those bang on the podium kind of, if God had wanted man to fly, he'd have given him wings. And every Sunday, because right at that time that was an issue, evidently, if God had wanted man to fly, he'd have given him wings. Well, Milton Wright had two boys named Wilbur and Orville. Mm. And Wilbur and Orville are sitting on the back row listening to their daddy, this religious figure and leader in their life. If God had wanted man to fly, and can you imagine? That's like, Daddy said fly. Did he say fly? Did he? Can you see? And see, what we have is one generation placing limitations, rules and regulations, rails to run on. This is the way it works. If God had wanted man to fly, he'd given him wings. But for the rest of the story, thank God, Milton Wright, when he saw that dream come alive, even though it was outrageous, and his sons, he's the guy that raised the funds and raised the support and created the landing strip, if you will, for them to launch their dream. And now who are we? We're kind of getting to be the old guys now, and we need to be the ones that are saying, fly. Right off if God had wanted man, find out what God wants, and let's take the limitations and the boundaries and the restrictions off of tomorrow.
Well, Larry, thank you for sharing that. That is fantastic. I mean, that in itself, to hear those two boys sitting in the back, listening to their father, their earthly father, and the whole time the heavenly Father is saying, let's do this.
Yeah.
So they had the creativity just flowing through them. So, well, Ray, we know your journey illuminates the path for many seeking to merge creativity with spirituality. We want to thank you so much for sharing your profound insights today.
Yeah. And your words are such a beacon of inspiration for, again, us. We're grateful for the light that you've shed today. And I know so many things what you have said will awaken something in corporations and businesses that should have always been there and never left, like you said. At what point did we put the rules and change it up to where we couldn't be fully, man fully alive is the glory of God, it says. Man fully alive is the glory of God. And so thank you for just making this podcast and all the listeners come fully alive today. So tell us, Ray, I know that there's a place we can find you. You have a podcast that you've recorded in the past that is incredible. You will want to walk in the rain with this and listen to Ray. And you've written some books. So tell the people that are listening where they can find you, and we'll put all this in the show notes as well.
Well, I have, our website is called rayhughes.org. So I'm real simple and easy to find. And on there, I got a lot of teaching from years and years of teaching. And 5 years ago, when we realized we were confined and cocooned here at home, I told our folks, I said, just put everything in one big bundle. And I know there's 40 years of teaching on worship and all that, all kinds of series. Some of them are 22-part series. I got one there, David, Singer of Secrets, Dancer of Dreams. That's all Tabernacle of David. Anyway, there's a lot of them on rayhughes.org, and you just go on there, and it's a monthly subscription thing. And honestly, I meant to check. I think it's $19 a month or $29 a month or something, and you just get all of it. It's, hundreds of hours of teaching, and then if you don't want to listen to it anymore, just quit paying it. And just dive off. We don't hold you over hell with a rotten stick for your $19.
Well, and if I'm a business, I would say, what if you require that of your entrepreneurs, or like as a business, buy this on a monthly? And Ray's not telling me to do this. I'm just saying what his 40 years of teaching in that will awaken something in you, in your business or your employees or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
It absolutely will, Ray.
I do, and I do have one that is something that's not connected to that website. It's called redriverturning.com. And some years ago, I got an old tree from the Red River Meeting House where the first Great Awakening happened, second Great Awakening happened. The cradle of the second Great Awakening was there in Red River in Logan County in a place called Rogues Harbor. And so anyway, the short version, and you can read all of the story, how it all transpired. But anyway, the lightning struck the tree that was shading and shadowing the old meeting house. And that where God did something that changed the whole spiritual complexion of our nation. And so lightning struck the old tree. I got a call. They cut it down. They're going to take it away to burn. And I said, no, they're not. That's my tree. And the thing is I wanted to take that tree and turn it into guitars because I didn't think that story was over. And so then after I sent people up there and they brought the whole tree on semi loads of tree down here to Alabama, and I began milling it up. And well, not everybody plays guitar, and I just got the idea to start making ink pens out of it. And so I started making these really nice ink pens, and it was for money for missions and that kind of thing. And so anyway, I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to make them to give them away as honor gifts.
They're amazing.
And I made these things. There's one called The Songwriter, and one called Prophet of the Long Road, and so on. And anyway, I started making, and I felt kind of proud of what I'd done, and so I just put a couple of them on Facebook, just so people sort of say, that's nice, and they'd brag on me and make me feel good about my work. But what happened was people started making offers. And I said, I don't know how much. And so that's how I start businesses.
Hey, you got an
accident.
You know what? We always say, what does the market want? And then you create it. So the market told you it wanted those. And I have one of those too, by the way. And I love it.
I sold 12 of them in 30 minutes. And I thought, well, I think I'll make some more.
See, you are a businessman.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, Ray, thank you so much for being here with us. I know that our listeners, it will awaken everything you said today is going to awaken something inside of them to just, I don't even know what to say. I lose words when I'm around you. You do that to the women, don't you?
Well, you know what? I've got to get back to doing my podcast too. I do so many of everybody else's, and the podcast is called The Listening Porch. Yeah. And then one part, I had a sub series in there of that's called. I talk about all my family background and all that. It's called Deep Roots and Tangled Limbs.
Ooh, okay.
And so you go on there and listen to all the family stories, but it's all on, and I forget how many I did of them, but a bunch. And I got to get back to doing them again.
Well, it's good stuff. I've walked in the rain with you many a times listening to that when you release those in the beginning. So
we need to do that again and bring what's his name with you this time.
Yeah, what is his name?
We'll put him out there and turn him into a rainy day guy.
Come on.
Let's do this.
I'll take you up on that offer.
Let's do it. All we got to do is just put a 9-iron in his hand and he'll walk in any rain, right?
That's so true.
Now we're talking.
Well, Ray, thank you again for being with us and sharing your wisdom with everybody in the way we like to end all of our podcasts.
Peace in.
Peace out.
Kevin.
And Tanya Stout. Thank you, guys. So how many of you are ready to conquer your business, your income, and your life? Hit subscribe and join the Conquer Club, and let's start winning together.
Peace in.
Peace out.
Kevin and Tanya Stout.